Well, hey, everybody, welcome back. My name's Scott. This is Nathan. And if you're just joining us, we like to work through some really good, what we think are really good books and relate them to recovery, because we both work in the recovery ministry here at Christ Community, specifically with a ministry called Celebrate Recovery. We meet on Monday nights. If you are in the Westchester area, love to have you join us. Or if you're looking for a church, check out Christ Community. With that said, our current book is called Leading with Emotional Courage by Peter Bregman. Now, Nathan, this is a book that you originally recommended. I believe you had to read this for part of your coaching training. Is that right?
I didn't have to. It was suggested readings, but this is definitely one of my favorites. It's very clear, very easy to read. And of course, there's a lot of overlap with other ones that that even you and I have done.
Yes, so. A lot of overlap. And as we talked about in our last video, clear is kind.
Yeah, that's right.
Clear is kind. I think Brene Brown says that as well.
Yes.
So in this session, we're going to look at chapters 22, 23, and 24. So chapter 22 is Skillful Communication in the Heat of the Moment. Outsmart. You might think he's going to say outsmart your opponent. Actually, he says outsmart your next angry outburst.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts this chapter by talking about how someone responded to a text when it may have been him, I can't remember, but somebody responded to a text when they were angry and without thinking about it, and they ended up regretting it. And so I really, from a practical point of view, always wise to take a deep breath, take a few moments, let your emotions come down a bit, let your prefrontal cortex come back online, and then respond a little more graciously.
Absolutely. Certainly
one way to outsmart your next angry outburst.
Well, if you think about, standard rule, 90 to 93% is tone and body language and facial expression and just gestures and stuff, and the others are words. Text is definitely limited. So anyway, but he does, he actually says in here, always plan your communication. Now that sounds hard because man, we are listening and communicating constantly every day. So it can feel hard because you don't feel like you have time to do that. But I would suggest, though, that when it's important communication, whether it's on the job or at home, you do want to at least plan it out. Even if it's just a few minutes to think about what for these. And he has 4 questions that I think are just great. I've used versions of them myself, and it definitely has transformed my communication.
Why don't you give us the first one?
Okay, so the first one, just what outcome do I want? Begin with the end in mind. That is a common rule stated in many different books.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that? That was stated by who was it? Covey.
Yes.
And what outcome do I want? Everything I'm preparing, it's what do I want the other person to get out of this? And it goes a long way with saying, okay, well, if what I'm going to say next isn't going to lead to that, then that's just this is a rabbit trail.
Yeah. And so for example, he says, if I respond in an angry fashion, of course, that's going to put the other person on the defensive. Mm-hmm. And is that actually the outcome that I want? Well,
that's
no.
Right.
The outcome I want is really to be reconnected to this person.
Yeah. Or, or even if you're angry and you just want to show that person that you're angry, but what do you really want from them? You want them to feel that you got hurt by something. That's typically what an angry response might be as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the case, then it actually takes a braver path, which is probably maybe some anger, but some vulnerability as well. So
Absolutely.
so what's number two?
Number two, what should I communicate to achieve that outcome? So he talks about the actual content of what we're going to say. So instead of saying, Nathan, you did this to me, instead owning it with an I statement such as, I'm hurt by this action. It communicates vulnerability. And of course, vulnerability, I mean, if you compare vulnerability to anger, I think of that, what James says in the New Testament, the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God, right? And if the anger of man doesn't achieve God's righteousness, then the anger of Scott sure isn't going to achieve, my righteousness. Why would I presume that to be true? If it doesn't help God, why would it help me? So leading with I statements, it does communicate vulnerability. I'm hurt. It does.
Even if you do say, I feel angry,
Sure.
But if you're also choosing vulnerability, I'm feeling really angry because the story I'm telling myself is this.
The story I'm telling myself.
There's still room. Because that goes into number three, which is how should I communicate? And I think that tone is different than, even if you're angry, you can be shouting the whole time, or you can be angry and just saying, Scott, I am angry because the story I'm telling myself is you did this intentionally, and that tone is inviting, even if I'm still saying I'm angry, it's inviting you to now be a part of writing that story. So
it reminds me of another very closely related principle, these questions, which is, I never know 360 degrees of another person's situation.
Yeah.
And as I think I've said on some of these sessions before, half the time I don't even know 360 degrees of my own thoughts.
Maybe more than half the time.
Right. Let alone presuming I know exactly what you're thinking. So when I come in with, it's the difference between saying, I'm hurting, can we talk about this, is very polar opposite of saying, you hurt me because you did this.
You hurt me, I hate you.
Yes. Yeah. So what outcome are you going to get with that statement?
That's right.
Right.
Oh man. All right. So what's number four?
Did we do three? How should I communicate to achieve
three? How should I communicate?
Yes, you did.
Four.
Yes, sorry. Number four, when should I communicate? And that's an important one. When should I communicate? Don't communicate just because you feel like it. I'll be honest, I struggle with this one. When something's on my chest, I like to get it off. I don't really care what we are doing. I would rather blurt it out than the timing. But I've learned
makes a difference.
It makes a big difference. Bregman suggests, even considering when is the other person likely to be in a calm place themselves and ready to receive what you might say. So don't communicate just because you feel like it. Great. These are great skills to outsmart your own next angry outburst.
Yeah.
All right. So chapter 23, this is a
23.
Good one, right? Own your stuff. I want you to apologize.
Yeah. I mean, we just talked about our own kind of apology philosophy, which is not everything that is maybe confrontational has to be always an apology, because it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, which I don't like my wife to apologize just because she might feel that will
return you to harmony.
Right. For me, it's, now again, an apology, of course, is used when you need to own your stuff like that, flat out. It's best to just do that. Like, you did something, apologize, right? But then there is the apology for, just the emotional side of it, for how a situation has caused maybe either disconnection or something like that. So I understand that too.
And there, what we were talking about before this segment was there is the tension of apologizing when you're being asked to apologize when you're not quite sure that you have crossed the line, right? And
Right.
there's a part of me that almost thinks, well, wait, if I apologize, I'm actually blurring things because I don't agree that there was a line crossed. And so,
Yeah.
But that's,
And then,
I think that's part of the reason why apologies are so powerful. You don't
Yeah.
want to give them out lightly.
I mean, if someone asked me to about, like my wife, I do try and think through what I would apologize for, even if so if I don't think that I did something wrong, I will say, look, I'm sorry that this situation is causing you frustration, like that I can be sorry for, because I feel I can understand that the tenseness or the confrontation, the challenge, the disconnect is not good. But I try and be specific if I'm apologizing for it, because I haven't been sure if I did say something that was actually wrong, if I'm just sharing kind of how I'm feeling, unless I'm saying it really badly. Like if I say, oh my gosh, you hurt me, I hate you, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's like that. Okay, I'm sorry. That was a wrong way of saying it, which I have actually apologized for, because I said, okay, I said that wrong. Like I will own that, and probably many times people can definitely own the fact that they've communicated it badly.
Yes.
Or on the wrong time, things like that. But anyway, his point for this chapter is, though, that a lot of times it's to build the bridge, just showing that you are actually either empathetic or compassionate, or just caring enough that something happened that really could have been avoided, or it's just not right, on a justice level, maybe.
Yeah. He says apologizing is a very human gesture, and I love that. Apologizing diffuses anger. They really work. So,
it's treating people. He says it's treating people with respect. It's a way to also try and build trust. He even says a study of malpractice lawsuits. I know this feels like a little bit sideways, but reasons people gave for initiating the lawsuit. And he goes on to say what people really wanted instead of the lawsuit was just an explanation and an apology. But see, most people won't nowadays, especially businesses, because apology is a statement of
guilt,
right? Of guilt and neglect, which means you could lose a lawsuit if you actually say that. And so, unfortunately, our culture is training people to not apologize because they're afraid that would automatically lead to a loss of a lawsuit. It's terrible.
That it is. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that takes us to chapter 24. Let others know you see them. 20 seconds to a better bonus.
Yeah.
So he talks about this guy, Larry, who worked really hard on this project, I think for about a year at his place of work. And then he showed up one day and his bonus was there on his, I think he said it was on his chair with no
word of affirmation, nothing.
It was just there.
Just money.
And he goes on to say that if that would have been handed to him with a word of, you worked so hard, thank you for what you've done, you're making a difference, you've helped us achieve our goals, this is just our way of saying thank you, something like that would have made all the difference. He said, yes, it met the financial need that Larry may have had, but it left on the table the fact that this man worked so hard on this project, and the money doesn't speak to that side.
It says, I like this, the way he said is the absence was louder than the presence.
Mm,
Meaning the fact that it was just a check on a chair and not someone there to just say, well done. I just recognize how hard you've been working. We just value you so much here. Things like that, so the absence was much louder than really the presence of just a check. It says his psychological needs were not met because ultimately, we're actually not, as much as people think that money is the biggest issue, it's really not. He actually says, achieving goals, being loved and appreciated, having influence, basically being valued. Those are the primal needs that we have. And I think that's even in our economy of today, especially with all the great resignation, people quitting. I think that's a big part of it. People quitting because there's way more to it than just pay.
that's right. So that is, and as he's saying, you can do that in 20 seconds. And of course, his encouragement is to do that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Let people know
it just
that
doesn't take as long as what people think, because they're putting more weight to what happens in those 20 seconds than just the fact that it only takes 20 seconds.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That you matter, that you've made a difference, and we appreciate what you've done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a brief overview of chapters 22, 23, and 24 of the book Leading with Emotional Courage.
Yeah.
Again, we encourage you to pick this. This is an easy read, very helpful, very practical, very inspiring. I encourage you to check this book out. And we will pick it up next time with element 3. I don't remember what element 3 is. Maybe
it's about purpose.
Purpose. There we go.
Yeah. So we are grateful for you. We're grateful for seeing you on Monday nights. I'm grateful for you, Scott. It's great working along.
And you too. And it only took about 6 seconds to say all that. See? You don't even need 20.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.